What's up, guys? Teddy Cornwell here. Welcome to the Underdog Talk, and there is just something about the underdog. Today we have the mind behind the best tasting water in the world. But before we get in this interview, you know I have to give this guest a proper Underdog Talk introduction. Hailing from Minneapolis, Minnesota, today's guest majored in communications and minored in finance at Arizona State University, a former vice president of shopping and e-commerce partnerships for AOL, and finally the head honcho mind behind the best tasting water in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud and honored to present the one and only Miss Kara Goldin. How are you doing today, ma'am? How are you and the family?
Oh, thank you so much. Everything is really, really good. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a cold, wet day here in San Francisco, which I'm not complaining about because we needed the rain. It's nice, but it's definitely feeling like the holidays for sure.
Yes, it is feeling like the holidays. Well, I'm so glad to hear this. And before I even start kind of going into this, I just want to say how much I love, something that you posted on your story a while ago, actually. It says, choose your pain, the pain of working hard or not trying about regretting it later. And so inspirational, so true. Work hard and good things will happen. Don't work and never be satisfied. I love that. Now, Kara, I kind of want to take it way back if that's okay with you. And I want to take it back to the Arizona State, not Arizona, as you majored in communications and again minored in finance at Arizona State University, graduating in 1989, and then you moved to New York City after accepting your first job at Time Inc. So, Kara, out of college, what was your dream job? At that moment in time.
So I wanted to work in the magazine industry, and I figured, most college students, when you graduate, you're using what you're majoring in. And so I was a communications major with an emphasis on journalism and minor in finance. And so I really felt like I was gonna, go take on the world and figure out how I can really do great things and maybe in some ways disrupt. I don't think I actually use that word by going and working in journalism. And Fortune magazine was one of my favorite magazines. I felt like it was very approachable. The writers were excellent. I also read the Wall Street Journal frequently, but it was very text based. There weren't even pictures in the Wall Street Journal when I was looking for a job. And so I looked in the masthead of a Fortune magazine and saw that there was a managing editor. He was based in New York. And so I thought, what's the worst that could happen? I'm going to give the guy a call and see what happens. It ends up that he didn't answer the phone. I couldn't get through to him. So I wrote him a letter. And sometimes, even today, a letter actually, if you can get it to the right person and you tell them what you're interested in doing and why you're interested in doing it, it kind of works. And you're able to get the person interested on the phone, however you want to, maybe in a live meeting, and that's exactly what happened to me. Now the I'll skip to the end. I never got a job at Fortune magazine, but instead, as I was interviewing for that job at Fortune magazine, and they politely told me that I was not going to be a candidate for a role at Fortune because they didn't hire people right out of school. That's when I did what every great candidate should do, or even every great entrepreneur. It was good entrepreneur training, which is, what can I do? And so I asked, are there any other jobs in the building? Looks like a big building with lots of people employed here. Is there anything else that I can do? Because I just want to work here in the Time and Life building. And I was able to get a job at Time Magazine, which was, again, not my first pick, but I was happy with it. And, again, it wasn't in the field that I really felt like I wanted to ultimately do, which was journalism, but it was a step in the right direction. It wasn't I always tell people that staying complacent will kill you, right? That you have to figure out how to move forward. And that was my way of figuring out how to actually move forward was taking a role that ultimately I thought would lead me into an editorial or journalism, true journalism in my mind, role. And again, you never know what's going to happen. You have to sort of trust the universe that the right things end up happening, and so that was really my early days in having my first kind of role out of college.
And I mean, they do say underdogs run faster, and they always are the hungriest. And not only were you an underdog, but you actually capitalized on that, and you moved to Second Market, which was then bought by AOL, which you were actually vice president of shopping and e-commerce, which you actually grew this position to about $1 billion in revenue, which is just insane. Would you mind talking about what it takes to run a successful business, Kara?
I think like a lot of other things that I've done in, kind of starting that business, it was, I mean, first of all, there was a lot of technology that needed to kind of catch up to where people wanted the world to be. And so direct to consumer which is obviously happening today, was not really happening then. And it was, called e-commerce or selling online. And little did I know that I was part of, a very small group of people who were trying to figure out how to actually make shopping online happen. And road there was no roadmap, there was no puzzle picture that was laid out in front of me saying, here's how you get from point A to not point B, a little bit point B, but also point Z. And I thought it was exciting, right? I was, getting my MBA, as they used to say, in e-commerce and direct to consumer. Was it going to work? Maybe, maybe not. But I thought it was really fun that people actually paid me to go and figure out how to do trials and take tests. And the one thing I'll say about that kind of the early days of that for anybody listening too is that if you can get a role where somebody is allowing you to create and think and do a ton of research and talk to a lot of people. I talked to, mall commercial real estate mall developers to try and figure out how they thought about things. I was, always thinking about how can we accomplish something and what do we need in order to do that and what are the tools. And so more than anything, it was hard. It was a lot of hard work, but it was a lot of fun and very, very creative. I worked for a little startup when I moved from New York to San Francisco that was a Steve Jobs idea that had spun out of Apple. I didn't work for Apple, but I had stumbled upon this CD-ROM shopping company, and I thought the key tool that they have that I was most intrigued by was that Steve had this idea that if technology isn't caught up to where we need it to be in order to actually serve up graphics, there was no um, wireless connection like we have today. We'd never be able to stream and do some of the things that Steve Jobs had been talking about back in the 90s, and a few other people were talking about it as well. But instead, he had this idea to put it on a disc. All the graphics that you needed were put on a disc. And so if you remember in the 90s, that's when people were asked to upgrade. And so you would get these discs in the mail. I run into people all the time who would use the AOL discs for coasters and all of these other things. But the idea was just tell the consumer to upgrade. They don't need to know all the ins and outs and specifics. They need to know that they need to upgrade in order to get all of the great graphics that they need. And what he had this idea is that if you stick it on the hard drive, then you'll actually be able to accomplish a lot. It's not perfect, but it will be a stepping stone. It will allow you to not stay complacent as you're building this business and really create a lot of trial. So when I sort of saw the overall plan for that, I thought it was pretty cool. Again, didn't know whether or not it was going to work. One of our investors was this company called America Online. And America Online, by the way, another thing that I always tell entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs is that America Online, Steve Case probably wouldn't want to hear this, but they were not in first place. They were clearly like, number two or three behind Prodigy and CompuServe in those early days. They really were sort of just getting going, and they were growing at a very fast clip, but they were the underdog, and they were not in first place. So I think it's an important lesson too, that don't count the underdogs out, because if they are innovative, if they're thinking differently, as I truly believe Steve Case did and is, that is what is going to allow a company to make its way to first. And that is exactly what happened with America Online. Now, our company was acquired, and I had been running all of the business development efforts. So I would be going out to great retailers like J. Crew and LLB, and I was flying all over the place, building out this vision for the future. And we would ask people to not just be on the disc initially, the two market disc, but also on the AOL service. So we'd be building out these stores on the AOL server, because we wouldn't have to deal with all the broadband and some of the, graphics issues that you have to deal with when the modem speeds were not as high, if that makes sense to anybody listening. So I didn't have any budget. I didn't have any, I didn't have any revenue targets. And more than anything, kind of going back to too, my job was just to go figure this out and go create. And as I was doing that, I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. I guess I'm an accidental direct to consumer executive as well, because we didn't know when it was going to when it was going to get figured out. Of course, we thought that it would, and told everybody, oh yeah, this is going to be the future, but we didn't know when it was going to happen. And we didn't know when the technology was going to be there yet. By 2001, as you mentioned, it was almost $1 billion in revenue to AOL, which is just absolutely crazy. And it wasn't just me. There were tons of people working at AOL. It was another opportunity for me to see what a hockey stick looks like as well, where, every day they're adding more and more people, incredibly smart people at America Online back in those days, who were, really thinking differently, who could have done a lot of different things, but more than anything, they wanted to build and create the future. And behind a visionary entrepreneur like Steve Case, and also his president, Ted Leonsis. So it was an exciting opportunity. When I left there, I never thought that I would become an entrepreneur. So I had worked for a number of different entrepreneurs even prior to working at the little startup. I didn't work with Steve Jobs, but I worked with people who worked with Steve Jobs, who, gave me a lot of kind of lessons and wisdom, and that sort of came from Steve Jobs. But prior to that, I had worked at CNN, and not directly working for Ted Turner, but also an exciting place where I was able to see how somebody who was clearly a visionary entrepreneur and believed that the world needed 24-hour news was was, dead set on making that happen. And, that was again the early 90s. I mean, today you can't even believe that CNN was once a startup, but when I was there, it was 40% of households actually had cable, not 100% as today, and only 12% outside of the US had access to CNN. And it wasn't until the Gulf War that CNN was put on the map. And, it's a lesson too of, it just takes one incident, right? In order to one amazing thing to happen for a company to kind of go through this huge spike as CNN did, because although Ted Turner had been running around saying, everybody needs 24-hour news. It doesn't matter that it's all in English and, a certain percentage of the world doesn't speak English. And many more people didn't speak English even back then. What he said, they'll figure it out. The world is going to be much more connected. And again, that was, 1992. I mean, you think about today, how much we are connected. In fact, so connected that if you're having issues with, plants in China and you're a US based company, then, you can expect problems, right? And so there's things that Ted talked about back then that I still think about. So again, feel really privileged to have worked for incredible entrepreneurs, but still didn't think that I was doing that because I thought I was going to be able to go and become an entrepreneur myself.
Well, I mean, it's almost like you read my mind as you did decide to take a step back from this field of work and focus on raising your family. But you decided you want to spend time creating a healthy lifestyle, a healthy drink, and everything is sugary these days. And thank you for in 2006 you launched Hint Water. And I mean, what is the process of starting a water company like Kara?
Yeah, well, again, I didn't even think, okay, I'm going to go start a water company initially. For me, it was I was creating this product in my kitchen, which was water with slices of fruit in it. And I was frustrated because I couldn't find this product in the stores. And so when you're creating a product with water with fruit in it, it I had to buy fruit constantly because I would like every time I turn around, I'd look in the refrigerator, and I don't know if you've ever tried to put fruit in a pitcher, but after a while, or maybe you're at a, hotel that might have some sitting out, you can't have it out there in the water for very long before it goes bad, right? And looks like nasty. Maybe it tastes a little weird because it's actually getting a little weird. But so I wanted to find this product so that it would be convenient for me to continue drinking water. And just to back up, I was never a water drinker. I was born in Minneapolis, but I moved when I was a really little girl to Arizona, to Scottsdale. And so for me, I should have been drinking a lot of water because it gets really hot in Arizona, and I was an athlete, and there's a million reasons why I should have been drinking this, but I wasn't. And so I had finally figured out how to get me to drink water. And that was really during that time, as you mentioned, that I was spending with my family, and I was trying to make sure that I would be a good parent by putting the right things into my kids' bodies. And really, I wanted to get them off of juice and not be drinking so much juice. And I just thought that there's so much sugar. And I saw a very clear connection between if I gave my kids sugar and lots of sugar, they'd be bouncing off the walls at the park. They would get in fights in, the sandbox or on the airplane or whatever. And I thought, gosh, if I could just figure out a way to get them to drink something that didn't have so much sugar in it. And it wasn't until I actually created it in my kitchen did I actually have that idea that I could be able to, you know, it was pretty good. Maybe I should start drinking it and give up my diet soda addiction, which I had been drinking for years.
Wow. And I mean, obviously, since its creation, Hint Water has become an asset of the break rooms, Silicon Valley's highest profit companies, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn. And I'm even starting to see it in gyms because obviously in the gym, water is king, water is key. And for me personally, I just can't sit in the gym and drink plain water. I need a flavor water. I need that fruit in my water. And Kara, now this is the Underdog Talk, and the world's most underrated podcast. And you've talked about, the underdog mentality and why it is so important. So why do you think being an underdog is beneficial?
Well, I think that first of all, there's no expectations for you, right? In fact, we talk about the doubts and doubters and the people who don't think that you actually can accomplish something. And the highs and lows of being an entrepreneur are real. And I think that, there's these massive spikes that don't exist for people when as massive as when you're working in a large company with a lot more employees, and the risks are not as high, I guess I should say. So for me, I felt like uh I really saw firsthand how, starting off this life of being, a, an entrepreneur finally, and starting this was such a real thing. But I saw so many people counted me out, and I think that when you're it's hard that when they're counting you out, but the light at the end of the tunnel, I guess is the best way to say it, is that when people are counting you out and you actually are making progress, and they see you showing up on shelves, or they see that your product is at kids birthday party, or you see um, you know it at your office, at Facebook, whatever it is, then you start to really be able to share why that's really um, a critical thing that you should have in your life. And again, I think people want to support underdogs too. I think more and more they're not that excited about seeing the large companies, the companies that have, billions of dollars, and where, you know, there's no sort of personality behind the product either. I think oftentimes underdogs as well have people attached to them. That's another point. And I think that today people buy from people. People invest in people too, right? So that is something that I think is a competitive advantage, because when you're thinking about who you're going to get behind, you want to size people up, right? You want to see whether or not you believe you. That happens when you're trying to start a company and you run into the doubts and doubters too. But it is, I think that the key thing is being able to show people that you actually can do something by not staying complacent and actually trying. And because I think that too, you may need to knock on a lot of doors. You may need to get a ton of no's and have a lot of failures along the way, but eventually that one thing is going to work out. And when it does, you just need a few of those in order to move to a different spot than where you're at today.
I totally agree. Now, Kara, you've really seen it all in the business and, commercial side. What is your biggest tip for someone who is looking to start their own company like you once did, ma'am?
I think that one of the things I think back on a lot, and why I was able to stick with it even during those like challenging times, is that I believe in what I'm doing, and I'm really passionate about what I'm doing. And frankly, if you're not, and you're starting a company and you're not enjoying it, you don't believe in it, then you shouldn't do it, because it's way too difficult to actually go and start a company and deal with um, the no's, deal with the doubters, deal with the highs and lows. And because there's so many other components to building a company, and it's not just about actually building the company and having a great product. You have to hire employees, you have to find an office, you have to have great swag, you have to be able to be on social media, all of these pieces that are really, really important to be able to build the company that you want to build.
I totally agree. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, the owner, the mind behind Hint Water. Now, Kara, I know you are a very busy individual, but before we get you out of here, are you down for some rapid fire questions?
Sure.
Favorite movie?
Ah, so interesting. Gosh, that's a good one. I have not seen I've been, watching series more than anything,
Okay,
but
favorite TV show. We could go there.
favorite t you know, one of them that I've been watching that, actually I'm desperate to have them put the subtitles, in English for this, season is, it's called Fauda, and it's an Israeli, uh the operatives, and really talking it talks a lot about the history between Israel and Palestinians, and, anyway, it's very, very interesting, and I think they're on, like, season 3 now of it, and it's excellent.
I will put that on my list. See Arizona State win the national championship or have your hero drink hint water for the first time.
Wait, sorry, what was the question? I
So,
couldn't
see Arizona State win the national championship in any sport you get to pick, or have your hero drink hint water for the first time. Your favorite celebrity drink hint water.
Well, I've had favorite celebrities, drink, or influencers drink hints. So I would have to say the national championship. I actually, when I was at Arizona State, the ASU went to the Rose Bowl. So that was definitely an exciting time. But I was able to meet Richard Branson recently, and I didn't actually ask him to drink hint, but he happened to be drinking hint right in front of me, which I thought was pretty darn cool.
That is destiny. It
Yeah.
almost feels like that is destiny. How cool is that? Final question. This is a big one, and I'm really interested. Favorite hint water flavor?
That's like asking who is my favorite child. I have 4 of them. So, but, I rotate around a lot. I like them all, otherwise I wouldn't release it, but probably cherry is my go-to. If I have every flavor lined up in the refrigerator and easily accessible, I would say that cherry is probably my go-to, but I like a lot of them. I love the smash ups that we do that we sell on direct to consumer, which is basically we throw, 2 flavors together, so pineapple, tangerine, and or clementine, and, yeah, we put things together that just to have some fun with it, but also it's unique, it's limited editions, so I love those.
I love limited editions. I've just got to throw that out there. I mean, Kara, it's been an honor and privilege to talk to you. Now, before we go, is there anything you want to plug? Where can we find, Hint Water? Where can we find your social medias? And most importantly, where can we find that amazing book of yours, which I have read fully and it is so inspirational, so motivational? Where can we find all this, Kara?
So fun. Well, Kara Goldin all over all platforms, and, the book is called Undaunted,
Yep.
and the subtitle is Overcoming Doubts and Doubters, but if you look up Undaunted, you will see it. My picture is on the cover. You can get it at bookstores, at Amazon, and, really probably the best compliment that I had on the book was, from a consumer who said, this is a real, honest, authentic account of what it is like to actually build a company. And you don't have to be a beverage executive or a female entrepreneur in order to appreciate being able to, get something, the lessons and wisdom out of this book.
I totally agree. And I mean, first person to buy Undaunted, send me a screenshot. I will send you a case full of hint water. I mean, the book truly has changed my life. Please go check it out. I mean,
I
ladies
love it.
and gentlemen, go check out Kara's content because I mean, it's almost like every day is another motivational, quote, and it really gets me out of bed every day. And I mean, hint water itself. I mean, I've been going to Giant every day for the past few weeks and just getting every flavor I can get my hands on. Such a good brand, such a good message. Again, go check out Undaunted. Go check out Hintwater. Kara, an honor and privilege. Thank you so much for your time coming on
Thank you.
Underdog.
I really, really appreciate it.
And as they say, Kara, there is something about the underdog. Have a good one, guys. Bye. Underdog out.